So here's a question that I've had from my Essentials group about teaching fractions and looking at the classic images that we see in most schemes, which are circular. I'll draw two of them. And we have half like this and quarters like this. Now, mathematically, there is absolutely nothing wrong with this as long as they're pretty accurate, but they're not going to be what teaches your children about fractions, halves and quarters in this case. In fact, what they're going to do is these images, when you use them too early, are going to have children thinking that it is literally about drawing a line down the middle. So if, for example, I had this many counters and I wanted to know about how many half was equal to, you will generally get children doing this. Now, hang on a minute, oh dear, make it a little bit more accurate than that. That, again, mathematically is not wrong because we've got a whole one here and we've got a whole one here. So we've got two altogether because we've got 8 halves here and 4 of 8 is equal to 1 half. But of course, your children are not at the stage where they can understand that yet. What they think is that halving is just about taking circles and drawing a line down the middle. So it's the wrong image at the wrong time. So let's find out what we need to do instead. So surprise, surprise, it starts with your planning. And the member who asked about this was saying that they were doing planning for their teachers. And my main message there is you can support people with their planning, but you cannot do someone's planning for them, because planning is your preparation for teaching. It is the most important stage in your teaching because it's when you think, it's when you do your research and check your facts. It's about when you connect with where your children are already at. And no one else can do that. Apart from anything else, you're going to end up starting to teach without having prepared for that teaching. And again, that's not going to work. You will end up in PowerPoint zone, worksheet zone. I am teaching the children to do maths rather than think like mathematicians. So instead, as an Essentials member, you have your planning, medium-term planning maps, which we went through in this month. So it's our focus at the moment. And it is really important. I'm just going to make that more like that. I think as we're doing fractions, I'll try and divide it up a little bit more equally. This is going to teach you everything that you need to know. So you need to go and check your subject knowledge. Oh, my pen's not very good. Check your subject knowledge. What does halving and quartering, what's the definition of a fraction? And you can hear me when I'm saying halving. So we've got halving and doubling. So fractions are obviously not only are halving and doubling related to that, but they're also related therefore to division and multiplication, which is also connected to addition and subtraction. So you have got a connections section here as well. You've got your language here and so on. So this section here is vehicles, and this is a really, really vital place to start with your thinking. Your children, not one of them will not have encountered halving in their lives. They already know what halving is, and they will have also done things like splitting things into thirds. If they're one of 3 children, they very often will have seen things split 3 ways. So you absolutely need to start with what is meaningful to your children. Okay, so how do we discover the vehicles? Again, this is all in your Essentials library. Look at the very opening section about planning. Well, you're going to notice what fascinations are happening and what daily routines that you will see where fractions are happening. So you need to be really clear on what a fraction is, the idea that we are sharing an amount equally, okay? It is a confusing concept because the whole can have as many parts as you want within that, and it's still one, but we've got this idea about we can, have as many things with it that we can be halving, but it's always with halving about the divisibility into 2 groups, thirds divisibility into 3 groups, quarters into 4 groups, and so forth. But you need to start noticing, when are your children in their play and the things they're interested in, that's what fascinations are, when are they already sharing things equally? So it's not even just halving, but that will be one of the most common ones. But when is this happening? So get your big piece of paper, you'll hear me talk about this a lot, with your pen on it, tied to it so no one can walk off with it, maybe 2 pens even, treat yourself. And you are going to start noticing with your team when you see children dividing things equally. Then you're going to look, is there anything in your daily routines where this happens? When you're organising the children, when you are doing snack, that kind of thing, when you are sorting out apparatus for a game, something like that. You may also bring in provocations, things, so that could be context and probably groups of objects that you would meaningfully want to divide into equal groups. So you start here, you start with meaning. And then, and you can do this when you're thinking about your subject knowledge as well, if you know that your children regularly in snack are having to make sure everybody gets an equal amount of whatever it is, and it's strawberries today, and you say, just make sure you and Chloe get the same amount so it's fair, and they're using their subitizing skills here to think, well, if I had 2 and Chloe had 2, we've got 2 each there. They're not usually bothered about how many this is in total, but what you've done there is you split it between 2, so that's fractions. You split it in half, and each person's got 2 pots within their halves. If it had been more, because often there's an overgeneralization that when you halve things, you're going to get 2 because it is division by 2. But of course, if it was this many strawberries arranged randomly, you might say, well, look, we can have this many each. Oh, look, we can have another one. And that links, of course, with the idea there are 2 3s in 6. So there's your link with addition, with 10 frames, with perceptual subitizing and so forth. So you've shared into 2 groups, so that is halving. However, if the instruction is, well, you can have 2 each, or find out how you can share this, and there's 3 children this time. Sorry about my pen. I need to change colour. So we could have little photographs of the children here, make it a lot more meaningful, and the children themselves will be even more meaningful. So here we know we'd end up with 2 each. Well, this time it's still been shared equally, but it's been shared between 3. So it's so important, use contexts that are meaningful to your children and they are using already. Talk about all fractions, not going into this halving and quartering, because the curriculum, there's so many issues with that. And when you do this, you'll see often children meet thirds before they meet quarters. The only reason schemes do quarters is because you can draw your other line across. You've done your karate chop and you go that way. Now, can you see here, if we go back to halving, if all your children know about halving is this doesn't make sense. This doesn't link to this model at all in the children's minds. What this is this is worth, if we do link this for our understanding, that's worth 6, and therefore there's 3 on each side. Now, a much better model than a circle, because a circle is really, really hard to divide up equally, particularly when you start dividing up into fractions greater than 2 parts, or thirds, quarters, and so forth, is what I always do is draw one and then draw another one of the same size. So rather than draw one, draw a long one and draw it in half. What happens with halving is it's a bar. That's what we had originally. And what we've done is we've split it in half. So we had 6 and we split it into 3 and 3. But the first time we had 4. Let's make it back to 4. And we split it, so here's my 4, the whole, and we wanted to divide it equally, 2 and 2. What did we do the last time? Well, put another child. So this time, draw a piece, doesn't matter how long it is, but what matters is you try and make this equivalent. Be very wobbly to begin with, you as well as the children. That's the whole amount. So the whole amount, you might not even know how much the whole amount is yet, so they're not usually that bothered about that. But what do we know? They've each got 2. And all together, well, I'm going to put it on my 10 frame. or I could use my knowledge of perceptual subitizing and patterns, it's 6. So you can do this if there was 4 children and we had more. Then, of course, what we'd end up with is, don't just add this on, I'm doing it just to show you on this example, it would look like this. It doesn't even have to be longer. It could be like this, and each of those is worth 2, and the total was 8. That is an 8, even though it doesn't look like one. So my messages are, you need to start from your planning. You need to be really, really clear on what fractions are. You need to start with what the children are using and doing and already understand to do with fractions. Then you need to think about fractions of quantities. And when you use a model, I would always use the bar model as the example. And you can model with this and the children can start to work with this when they're ready. This is so much better than ever using a circle. If you want to get into pizzas and things later, do. But by that time, your children are going to have an understanding that half doesn't just mean draw a line down the middle. Right, hope that's helped a little bit. And watch this again, see what you get from it.